So I think there's kind of certain sectors of the Palestine movement that are kind of lobbying MPs and kind of doing the traditional stuff. And that's what they would say. We're the most radical part of the Palestine movement,
Mm,
which I think we're all really proud of.
mm.
And we're pushing other people towards that way of thinking right now, which is fantastic. We can all see the kind of person that Keir Starmer is. Who knows if he was genuine in his beliefs when he defended that case all that time ago? And the politicians are actually just at the service of the military industrial complex. That's the
Mm,
truth.
yeah.
That's why they're having all these secret meetings with Elbit Systems, with Israeli politicians. The UK is not complicit, it is instrumental, and it has been from the very beginning.
How would you like to introduce yourself and your work?
Well, my name's Francesca. I'm from Palestine Action. I recently spent 9 months in prison from July last year on remand after a couple of actions here in Yorkshire. I after that I spent 2 months with a curfew tag again, just on bail before the trial. Our trial recently finished. We got found guilty, and I'm waiting to be sentenced in a couple of weeks. So fingers crossed, won't get sent back to prison.
Mm. Of course, this past Wednesday, Parliament has voted to prescribe Palestine Action. A case has been brought to impose a temporary ban on this on the prescription, but obviously, if it fails, Palestine Action will be considered a terrorist group in the early hours of tomorrow morning. It's quite intense. Could you just sort of give us an assessment, your assessment of the prescription and the possible consequences of it?
Yeah, so the first thing I have to say is that this really isn't a surprise for us. We know that the government's been trying to do this for quite some time, and that, in
Mm,
fact, is why the Filton 18, our comrades that are currently in prison, have already been illegally detained by the state for almost a year now,
mm,
without any justification whatsoever, treated as terrorists, treated appallingly. And there's another 10 people, the initial 10, that have also been charged under, not under the Terrorism Act, actually. They say there's a terrorism link, which is something I'd never actually heard of before. So that means that it's not included in the trial. The jury don't get to hear about this or judge this, which is the way it should be. All it means is that the judge can come in afterwards when they get sentenced, if they get sentenced,
mm,
and give them some crazy jail sentences, which is just a massive misuse of this legislation of their powers. So it's no great surprise to us, I have to say, and not just for us, but for many other comrades that are involved in the Palestine movement,
mm,
like Asa Winstanley, a
mm.
journalist, like the SOAS 2, the students that are being accused of terrorism for making speeches. So this has been quite a long slide into this draconian treatment, and this is just seems to be the final nail in the coffin. Uh, well, I won't say that actually, because we're just bouncing back in a really incredible way. So actually, I didn't know this is called the Streisand effect. It's from Barbara Streisand, but I think we can call it these days the kneecap effect or
Yeah,
the Bob Dylan effect.
yeah.
That it's just had the completely opposite effect. When you try to suppress something, people want to know even more about it. And the amount of solidarity that we've received in the past week has surpassed all our expectations. It's been incredible,
Mm,
and it's a real kind of I'm a Spartacus moment. In fact, I was just at Glastonbury last week doing some talks, and the amount of solidarity support that we received was just incredible, incredible. And any kind of stress or fear or worry of this situation just completely dissipated, because I know that everyone is with us. Like so many kinds of people that wouldn't even normally associate with us because they think that our actions are extreme have just
mm.
totally come out on our side. And so many people I spoke to have said to me, I was thinking about joining Palestine Action, but now I'm definitely doing it.
Mm,
So we're ready to go
mm.
100%.
Could you maybe talk a little bit more about the precedent this sets and how dangerous it is?
Absolutely. So yeah, again, a long time coming. This started with the 2003 Terrorism Act, which is now over the years it's being used more and more. But now it's finally coming to the kind of mainstream because Palestine Action is, ironically enough, we never wanted to make a kind of mass movement.
Mm,
We always thought a small group of dedicated people could make the change that we wanted to see. But without our even trying, it has become a mass movement. And that's why people are talking about it so much. But this has been used for many years. And it's obviously very racist, very colonialist, because it's always been used against Muslim people. Like this would never be used against other protest groups that are protesting against climate change, for example. There's obvious massive racist element to this. And I really feel like this is just the kind of colonial chickens coming home to roost. You know, people can really see it's just laid bare how insidious these lies are about the idea that we have some kind of democracy. We've always outsourced our repression to other countries and other continents, but now we're finally seeing it here. So this is not just a fight for us, for our country, but for everywhere else. That's why it's so important for our movement to be international, to be anti-colonial, and as one of my favorite writers said, it's for us to fix our own democracy.
There's a bit of an unusual contrast with sort of Keir Starmer's, he's defended a very similar case to the incident at the RAF base, and the way that the government has reacted to this incident. Where do you think this is coming from?
Well, we can all see the kind of person that Keir Starmer is. Who knows if he was genuine in his beliefs when he defended that case all that time ago? But beyond personal judgments, it's obvious that the system just is totally broken. I mean, it never really worked in the first place. And power corrupts. He is just... I don't know if you saw this meme. I think it summed it up really well for me. This classic meme of the guy walking with his girlfriend and another girl walking down the road and he's looking back at her. So I saw one which was Keir Starmer is the guy looking back and his girlfriend, like traditional Labour voters, and the girl walking down the street, Reform voters. So he's looking down there trying to get these Reform voters, but he's always going to fail because, Reform voters, they're not going to change their mind.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It seems a little bit like he's trying to pander to a crowd that is never really going to be on his side. But
I'm failing miserably.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, how would you have had Keir Starmer respond to the break-in? I mean, because on the one hand, I suppose you could make the argument that his hands are tied. If he was to show lenience, Farage would probably be eating him for breakfast at the next PMQs. How would you, in an ideal world, how would you have had Keir Starmer respond?
I can't imagine Keir Starmer in an ideal world, to be honest with you. That's a very difficult question for me to answer. I mean, the way that the political atmosphere is in this country right now, we're in a very dark time in this country, and I think we can really compare it to fascism of the 1930s with so many powerful people that were on the Nazi side. And I genuinely feel like this is our generation's Vietnam, just in the way that the people are rising up to fight against this. So I can't imagine something different right now, but it's up to us to push back on this, to shift the Overton window and to fight against this repression. And who knows what will happen after this, but we'll always carry on fighting against that in whatever way we can.
What happens if Palestine Action is prescribed? What happens to the movement? What happens to the fight? How does it continue?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's more and more people are supporting us all the time, and you can't stop that. You can't stop the power of the people. I genuinely believe that. And there's always ways, movements change, they reinvent themselves. It's a constant process. And it's not just us that's included in that process. I think a lot of new people will be working together. We're making strategic alliances. There's a lot of stuff going on, like quickly developing situation, but everybody's ready. Everybody's got a lot of energy and a lot of commitment. And that's just a beautiful thing to see. So just watch this space.
Are there any particular figures or, let's say, MPs that you are impressed with that have really come out and supported the cause?
Well, that's actually a very interesting question for me, because I was at Glastonbury last week at the Speakers Forum, which is, they invite lots of different people to speak. And for the first time in my life, I was spending time with, actually camping next to politicians,
Wow.
which was really bizarre
Must have
situation
been
for
very
me because,
strange.
not something I do on a regular basis.
Mm,
But it was really interesting because obviously just the fact of them being there shows that they're interested in these things. A lot of Green councillors and politicians, even a couple of Labour ones, and some of those people have shown great support. I want to give a shout out to Zara Sultana.
mm,
Her speech in the House of Commons the other day was absolutely amazing. She's just, yeah, amazing, beautiful person. And Jenny Jones, Baroness Jenny Jones,
mm,
believe it or not, Baroness, is 100% with us. And she also made a great statement in the House of Lords yesterday. So we can see that Peter Hinders also did a great speech. Um, Clive Lewis as well. So, that there are people that understand what's going on and they're fighting for us, but it's, they have to work within the confines of the system, which is very, very limited. And, they're a minority. But again, like I said, same with Palestine Action when we started, it's a small group of committed people that make the changes that need to happen. But we've always had our strategy, which is not to rely on the institutions. We do our own thing. We bypass that completely, and we'll continue to do so. If we have politicians as allies, that's absolutely amazing. Of course, we always welcome any support from good people, but we don't need them. We do our own thing.
in your mind, how complicit is Keir Starmer in what's happening in Gaza? Obviously, we're supplying Israel with intelligence. We're also, supplying them with parts of fighter
Yeah.
jets. How complicit would you say they are?
So I actually really don't like that term complicit
Mm,
because it implies some level of passivity, like looking the other way.
mm,
The UK is not complicit; it is instrumental, and it has been from the very beginning
mm,
with the mandated Palestine, with the Balfour Declaration. This wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for the UK, and they lie constantly about their involvement. But even the lies, they're not very good lies. Like with the Iraq war, at least Tony Blair bothered to fabricate a dossier, about weapons of mass destruction. They're not even bothering to do that. It's just pathetic, really. So, and yeah, like with the Balfour Declaration in the very beginning, it was Christian Zionists who actually pushed this idea.
mm,
So we really need to learn our history, understand our history to understand what's going on right now and how to challenge that.
mm,
This goes way beyond complicity. And it's not just about individual politicians as well, it's the entire system. The politicians are actually just at the service of the military industrial complex. That's the truth. That's why they're having all these secret meetings with Elbit Systems, with Israeli politicians. We all know what really rules our country and this world, and that is capitalism.
mm. Is there any room for nuance there? Is it as simple as withdrawing intelligence being sent to Israel and withdrawing, cancelling the contracts that are sending fighter jet parts over there?
So I think there's kind of certain sectors of the Palestine movement that are kind of lobbying MPs and kind of doing the traditional stuff, and that's what they would say, arms embargo, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm,
And it's all good. Obviously, we more to the radical side of this. We're the most radical part of the Palestine movement,
mm,
which I think we're all really proud of.
mm,
And we're pushing other people towards that way of thinking right now, which is fantastic. No, it's not enough. This is just one part of, like, Palestine is just there at the forefront of all the suffering that is caused by colonialism, by imperialism, by capitalism. It's a symbol for all of this other suffering and oppression around the world,
mm,
and has been for quite a long time. So what we're talking about, apart obviously Palestine Action has a very focused target. That's because we know that works, but that's just the beginning as far as I can see. We need to challenge this entire system. So no, an arms embargo is absolutely not enough.
mm. Fair
And
enough.
I know, if when Palestine is liberated,
Yes.
that to me will just start a domino effect. That's why people are so passionate about this cause right now.
Yeah. Just going back to the sort of initial days of the Yvette Cooper basically proclaiming that Palestine Action will be prescribed. What was your initial reaction immediately?
I think it's quite normal when you hear news like that to uh, maybe not shock, but It gets you. It's a difficult thing to process. I think that's very normal, but we all bounced back pretty quick because we knew we didn't have time to, sit around and feel sorry for ourselves. And the great thing about that was, and I think it's really important in any radical social movement, is the power of community, of looking after each other, of sharing our emotions and sharing our weaknesses, because that is a really powerful thing. And once we do that, because the state, and this happens a lot in prison as well, something that I experienced for myself, the state wants to isolate us, and one way of isolating us is to make us ashamed of our emotions and to feel that we're the only one that feels like that. And that just, yeah, that ruins you. It makes you weak. But if we share that together, we're humans, we believe in humanity, we have empathy, and that's why we're doing this. So if we share that together, then we can lift each other up, and that makes us incredibly strong.
Thank you so much, Fran. Really appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
My pleasure.
Awesome.